Welcome into this week's episode of Three True Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher, and we are here to break down all things college basketball once again this week as we roll through the month of December. We're about midway through now. Of course, at the end of this month, we will not only have a long span without college basketball games, a few days off, but we here on the podcast will be taking a few days off as well. We will pick back up in the new year. I believe that next week's episode will be our final one of this year. So we've got this episode, an episode on Tuesday with Jamie Shaw, and then one more next Thursday. Of course, the Thursday after that is Christmas, and we don't really have any college basketball being played over the course of that week. So we're going to take that week off, and then the next week I will be getting married, so we will be out that week as well. Then we will return in the month of January. We will have plenty to talk about at that time. We will be in conference play, so you're not going to want to miss that. So if we're not on your feed for 2 weeks there, don't worry, we will be back. Just wanted to give you a heads up there as we get into today's show. The lineup here today, it's a loaded slate. We're going to talk in this first segment about Michigan basketball because they're doing some scary things right now. The margin of victory that they have held over their last 5-6 games has been really, really impressive. They are blowing teams out, and it does not matter who they play, where they play them. Michigan is going out and dominating every aspect of the game. So we have to talk about it. We have to compare it to some recent memory, yes, but to some historic college basketball feats. Still very early in the season, but what they are doing is worthy of a lengthy conversation early on this season. Then in the second segment, we're going to talk about the SEC. Which teams are ready to panic? Which teams are feeling great about themselves? We're going to look at how worried every SEC team should be to this point in the season, primarily because things haven't gone the SEC's way this year. Last year, it was the year of the SEC. Every story was about the SEC. How many one seeds could they get? How many in the top 16 overall? How many could they fit in the NCAA tournament? Obviously, setting a record for most bids into the postseason. This year, it's a different story. There's quite a few programs that are struggling that look like they're already, at least for now, out of the bubble picture. They would have to have a really strong conference slate to get themselves back into the mix. Other teams that are underachieving from what they should have been. Really, right now, the top ranked team in most metrics is Vanderbilt, which is not something that we saw coming entering the year. So we're going to talk about which teams in the SEC should be worried at this point as we kind of get towards the end of their non-conference resumes. They're going to start having to play against each other week in and week out. And in the final segment, we're going to take a couple of questions that I've gotten, a little Q&A, a little mailbag, and talk about Nebraska. We'll talk about a couple of NBA draft prospects at the point guard position and so much more. That's the lineup here on Three True Values, but we're going to start with Michigan because they are the best team in college basketball right now. I don't think it's particularly close. They've got depth, they've got top end talent, and they have got a system that they have figured out. They are bigger, they are stronger, they are more physical, and they're just playing better than anyone else in the country right now. And that is signified in the comparisons that you can make. If you think back just 2 years ago to the 2024 UConn team that won the title, during the first half of the year, they were a really good basketball team. During the second half of the year, they were unstoppable, beating teams by 20, 30, 40 points every night. And that went through the NCAA tournament. Nobody came close to them for a full 40-minute game. Now, way too early to be directly comparing Michigan to that run because as I said, even that UConn team took a few losses early on in the year. And then they went on this incredible run. But if you're this Michigan team, the things you are doing line up with what UConn was doing at the end of that season. So can they sustain it? That's a big question mark. Are they peaking too early? I don't know. We will find out all of those answers over the course of this season. But right now, what they are doing over this 6 game stretch is remarkable. Have not played a game within 25 points over that stretch. Have won multiple games by 40 points against pretty high level competition. Beat a Gonzaga team that is ranked inside the top 10 in every metric by 40 points on a neutral floor in Las Vegas. So this team is dominant. So let's look at what goes into that. We'll look at the numbers first here, and then we'll look at some of the players and, of course, Coach Dusty May. Because during this run, if we line it up with 2024 UConn and look at the net ranking, because the net rating tells you per 100 possessions where this Michigan team stacks up. How bad do they beat their opponents? Well, plus 37.18 is their current rating according to KenPom. UConn's during that season was 36.43. So they are actually beating their opponents by more. Now, again, that UConn season had those couple of slip-ups early on. Michigan remains undefeated to this point, 9-0. So we will see how that holds up. We will see. I am sure that it will come back at least towards that 36.43 number, because to dominate like this for a full season, we would be talking about one of the great seasons of all time. Forget about comparing them to a team that played 2 years ago. This would be historic numbers. You look at the offense. That UConn team was 127.5 offensive rating. Michigan, 122.8. They're not even the number one offense in the country right now. But they are a really good offensive team. And here is the key. That UConn team was known for being elite on defense, with Donovan Clingan in the middle. The perimeter defenders that they had, Stephon Castle, 91.1 defensive rating. This Michigan team so far has an 85.6 defensive rating. That is number one in the country by a good margin. They just are not letting teams score at all. They have been incredible with this 3 big system, with the versatile wings that they have acquired. And it is working better than anyone could have imagined under Dusty May. So let's talk about that. Because Michigan has not played some cupcake schedule to get to these numbers. They are playing, I believe, the 6th toughest strength of schedule so far. They are right up at the top in strength of record to this point. Dusty May last year took his team on a deep NCAA tournament run, and entering his first year at Michigan, faced some criticism, faced some at least question marks about what he was doing playing 2 traditional bigs and Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden together on the court at the same time. It felt like that maybe wasn't the best way to play modern basketball. Well, he didn't care. He went and he figured out a system that had Danny Wolf operate as a facilitator a lot of times at the top of the key, Vlad Golden as a traditional screen setting, rebounding big, and it paid off. It worked extremely well. This year, he doesn't have a Vlad Golden. He doesn't really even have another Danny Wolf, but he has an Ade Mara, who is very tall, good processor, big physical screen setter, who also can rebound. He has Morez Johnson, who is one of the strongest. He doesn't have the height, but he's got that physical strength down low, the defensive prowess. And then he's got Yaxel Lindeborg, one of the best bigs in terms of the bend that he has, the versatility that he has, his lateral movement, the speed in general is really good for the position. And so Michigan is able to throw three completely different looks at you in the front court. If they want to go with one big, they can change styles entirely from 1 minute to the next. If they want to go with two of them, well, do you want an undersized lineup that has great defensive versatility, or do you want a supersized lineup that will completely wipe out the interior? This team, by the way, is holding opponents to 37.9% on 2-point shots. That's the kind of defensive anchor that they have created with this three-man trio in those big spots. Teams are just not scoring at the rim against Michigan. Ademara has been proven as a great rim protector with his size. Yaxel Lindeborg, we talked about, the athleticism allows him to stay in front of smaller players, but also to use his quickness against bigger players. And Morez Johnson, just the physical strength, keeping you out of the paint, has worked to his advantage. So I'm not sure how teams crack Michigan's defense to this point, and that gives them such an advantage, such a platform for their offense to then go out there. They don't have to be the number one offense in the country to be fully dominant. And you look at the growth of Elliot Kadu at point guard, his assist numbers, he has gotten his teammates involved. He has really accepted the facilitator role in this unit. And I think that that's big for them because it gets everyone to their spots. And you look at the guys on the wing that they've brought in, Roddy Gale, Nimari Burnett, the veteran Will Cheddar, just happy to be in the system, be part of the rotation. There's not a lot of ego guys there. Nimari Burnett, veteran guy. He's just happy to be in the rotation, happy to be part of the mix on this team. Trey McKinney, has come in, and I was a big fan of his in the recruiting cycle. I thought he had a lot of potential. He's big body, 6'4", off guard, can handle the ball though. And he has come in and looked really, really solid, already averaging double figures for this team. The shot is hit or miss, but as he continues to develop, continues to understand his game, continues to understand his role within this system, I think he's going to keep getting better and better. LJ Kaysen has served as a really solid backup point guard. This is a team that even when they put in the reserve unit has been maintaining leads against high-level competition, against Power 4 opponents. They did it in their last game out against Villanova. That bench unit went out there and you started to think, okay, well, they'll whittle this down. It was 30, 35. They'll get it to 25. And they started to. But then slowly that bench unit started to get more of a rhythm and they pushed it back out to 30 points. This Michigan team is doing things that deserve widespread conversation. And the longer that they can hold on to it, continue to beat teams like this, the more interesting this storyline is going to become. Because Dusty May has proven that there is no one way to build a roster in college basketball. He loves the idea of using his big men as an anchor, but he's not held down by one archetype of big man. And I think that is going to be huge for this team in recruiting moving forward. Obviously, in landing players in the transfer portal, you went out and got Yaxel Lindeborg. That was a big get, one of the top available names in the portal, and it's paying off. You're seeing immediate dividends, even though he's not playing in the same role that he was at his previous school. Still averaging 15, 7, and 3 with 3 stocks. And that's with Morez Johnson coming in from Illinois, averaging 13 points, 7 rebounds. Ademara, who comes in from other stops as well, almost 10 points, 9 rebounds. Their production from them big men alone is enough to win some games. I mean, it's incredible what he is able to get out of that big position, and I think he's going to get more and more hyper talented guys. This is a team that also I think we could really look up and say, man, all three of the players in that front court went on to play in the NBA. Now, I don't know their role that they will have specifically, but Yaxel Lindenborg already expected to be a first round pick, probably. Morez Johnson, I talked with Jamie Shaw a couple weeks ago. He's a really interesting prospect because of kind of the archetype he plays in, the kind of history, the lineage of players that look and play like him who are in the NBA and have had some success. Ade Mara, obviously, just the brute strength and size that he brings is something that has become more and more valuable over the last couple of years. Not to mention the processing that he does possess and is continuing to flesh out. We'll see how this continues to develop, how the chemistry continues to grow. But this Michigan team is scary. They are the best team in college basketball today, and I think are probably going to exit the non-conference schedule as such. Barring a slip up, this is the team that I think is the scariest in the sport right now. Duke is right there with them. Arizona has a resume to match them for sure. There's a couple of other teams in the mix. Iowa State, not going to go away. Purdue, yes, they have one loss on their schedule, but they are a serious contender with a lot of veterans around there. There's plenty of other teams that are going to have something to say here. But right now, Michigan is at the top. When we come back, we're going to talk about the SEC. We're going to talk about the level of concern that some of those teams should have at this point in the season. Non-conference play not as smooth for that conference as it was last season, right here on Three True Values. Welcome back in here as we continue talking about all things college basketball right here on Three True Values. We are looking at the SEC's worry index. How worried or not worried at all should some of these SEC teams be at this point in the season? Obviously, 16 teams across the conference. Things going better for some than others, but as a whole, things are not going as well for the SEC as they did last season. Last year, they were the talk of the non-conference portion of the schedule, the talk of the season, really. We obviously know about the NCAA tournament bids. We know about the strength of that conference, how impressive that conference tournament was, what Florida was able to do down the stretch. We know about Auburn's run, Alabama in the mix, Kentucky was great. We know about everything that was happening there. But I want to take you back a full year ago because at this point last year, we were talking about the non conference schedule of these SEC teams, and it was a handful of losses total for the entire conference. I mean, they had multiple teams undefeated heading into conference play. They had so many teams that were looking like top 15 in KenPom, top 15 in the net, teams that were really in the mix for high seeding. And they finished up there. And part of why they finished up there is, yes, we talked about them beating each other up in the SEC schedule. Obviously, it became a joke that the SEC is 500 against itself, obviously. But the non-conference schedule is where you build that base that even though we lost multiple conference games, we still belong in this conversation because we beat everyone else. We only lost teams in our conference, and our conference is so good that it shouldn't count as negative against us. That hasn't been the case this year. The SEC has a team under 500. They have multiple teams with 3, 4 losses. There's only one undefeated team left in the SEC. So let's take a look at who should be worried, who shouldn't be at this point in the season. We'll start at the top based on their current record with Vanderbilt, who shouldn't be worried. They should be thrilled. Vanderbilt having a great season to this point, still undefeated. The favorites to win the SEC right now. Mark Byington is doing a great job there, and they have things headed in the right direction. Absolutely no reason for concern at this point. Georgia should be more than satisfied. Georgia is a team that we're talking about a little bit above the bubble conversation right now, still in the mix there. Haven't done anything to really hurt themselves severely to this point in the season, and will enter SEC play with every opportunity to build their resume for the NCAA tournament. LSU, they should be content. Yes, they took a loss that they would have loved to add to the win column, but I mean, this is about as good as you can ask for. Only one loss to this point in the season. You're going to enter SEC play with a real opportunity to continue to build, continue to solidify yourself in the bubble conversation. I think you would like some of the analytics to be a little bit more in your favor, but at the end of the day, you kind of, based on what you were hoping to get out of this season, I think that you're content at this point. For Missouri, I think things are fine. No worry about Missouri. They're about where they should be, about the record they should be, in the mix still for the NCAA tournament conversation. No worry there. Alabama, I think, is a little bit optimistic. They've played a couple of close games, taken a couple of close losses against big time teams, but they've also put together some wins against some big opponents to this point in the season. So I think that there's some optimism there that as they get healthy, as they figure out the rotation, they will continue to get better and better and be able to compete with some of these top teams. So if you're Arkansas, I think you're kind of waiting right now. You saw a couple of losses against big teams. You got one big win against a highly rated team. Now you're in a waiting game. Where do we really stack up? Can we continue to improve? You've got a couple of young guards who are really leading things. Can they become more, just that little bit more efficient? Can they get teammates involved a little bit more? Can Carter Knox get to where he's supposed to be? Trayvon Brazile, can he become a little bit more consistent? You're kind of waiting for things to fall into place if you're Arkansas right now. If you're Auburn, I think so far so good. You knew that there were going to be some road bumps. You had a brand new coach, never been in that top seat before. Stephen Pearl has taken over. They've gotten a couple of good results. They've been competitive in a couple of other games against top teams. I think that if you have any worry, I would pump the brakes. I think that they're headed in the right direction. I think that they've got the players. Look, Todd Pettiford has just not flat out not been very good so far. And you know what he was able to do last season. So your hope is that he continues to build, get back into form. His points are fine, but the efficiency, can he get that back up to where it was last season? That would go a long way in helping them. For Tennessee, I think you're starting to look around. I don't know if you're worried yet, but I think you're starting to look around and wonder who else is worried around you. Because a 3-game losing streak, yes, they've played some really good competition. They even have, right before that 3-game losing streak, they have a really, really good win. But Nate Ament is not shooting efficiently yet. The big men are kind of hit or miss, depending on the game. I think you're starting to look around and you're starting to think, we've got some things to clean up here. I think they can clean them up. I have no concerns that they really will, but a 3-game losing streak is a 3-game losing streak. No fan is going to be, in that thrilled column with in-state rival Vandy at this point, knowing where they stand right now. They're going to have to get back in the win column and get things clicking back the right direction. For Texas, I think they're a little bit scared. Look, if you look through the analytic numbers, you run the bracketology algorithm, they are on the wrong side of the bubble and by a pretty good margin. They're not really in the mix for a bubble spot in the latest bracketology update. So what does that mean? It's year one under Sean Miller. Yes, they are kind of piecing this roster together, but outside of Dalen Swain, they've gotten some good minutes at the big spot. There's just not a lot there that screams this is an NCAA tournament contender. So I think there's a little bit of a scared feeling there about what this season is going to be for Texas. At Texas A&M, I think you're still learning. I don't know if you're worried. I think you're just learning. It's Buckyball. This is a completely new system. You've had injuries that you've dealt with, haven't had your full complement of players out there, and that's a big part of Buckyball is that ability to run and run and run and hockey sub and then keep running. So still growing there. Mackenzie Mbako is back. We'll see how he continues to work his way into the system. I think that you're still in a little bit of a waiting period if you're Texas A&M before you hit the panic button on the NCAA tournament. Oklahoma, I think you're thinking about the bubble. More bubble thoughts for Oklahoma. Seems to be a perennial thing. They just understand where they are right now under Porter Moser. They're going to be on the bubble and they've got to get things figured out. And so from that, I don't know how worried you are today. You just kind of understand that down the stretch, it's going to get a little stressful in late February. South Carolina, it's not going great, but I don't think it's unexpected. So that's why I've got listed here just as expected. I don't think that a lot of South Carolina fans entered this season thinking, yeah, we're going back on a magical run from 2 years ago. Yeah, they brought back Michie Johnson, but they just didn't seem to have that same vibe. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't have a lot to say about South Carolina right now, given what they've done to this point in the non-conference schedule. But now it's time to talk about two teams that are, and really these whole next four, the last four here in the SEC. We've got Kentucky, and there's one word here to describe this: panic. The fan base is in a full-on panic. Yes, they finally picked up a win in Quad 4 again. They have not won a game in the top 3 quadrants. Quad 4 is the only place they've had success. And we are a month and a half into the season. That is not good for Kentucky. They have no non-conference resume to speak of, and they're running out of opportunities. They haven't looked competitive in a couple of the last high major games. There's a lot of concern here if I'm Kentucky. Yes, you've got some injuries that have disrupted things, but the problem is it feels like your coach is panicked. It feels like Mark Pope is really worried about the way that this team is going, the direction that things are headed. I mean, putting a lot of blame on himself. And I get the relationship he has with that fan base. He feels like he has to almost say what they want because he's one of them. He wants to go over the top to explain that he knows how they feel by saying that he would be mad at himself too, and that it's fair to say that they're a disgrace. It's fair to say that this team is terrible. I just don't think that's the right message. Like, at the end of the day, you're the coach. You're supposed to represent the players, and at times that means defend them. And if this is a team that is starting to fray, you going out there and saying, yeah, fans, you guys are the ones who are right, is not going to help the situation. I think last year it was great to be the guy who rallies with the fans. He understands how they feel. He's one of them. When things are going bad is not the time, though, to amplify the voice of criticism against your players. So I don't know what turns around right now for this team. Otega Oweh obviously needs to be a little bit better. They've got to get that front court figured out. The rim protection is just not there. Jaden Quaintance is going to be big for them when he comes back. But in terms of building a top 16 type of resume, I think it might be a little bit too late already. The SEC is not going to have the overall conference to conference comparison strength that it had last season. You're not going to, just because you won SEC games, automatically get one of those top seeds, especially when you didn't do anything in the non-conference schedule. So I'm not sure where the ceiling is for Kentucky in terms of their seeding. It's going to be interesting to play out. I think that they can get better. I don't think that it's just the end of the season, pack it in. But I think there's panic, and you're seeing it play out from the fans, from the coach. And you just hope it doesn't continue to reach towards the players, because that's when things do start to get away. At Florida, there is big concern because those guards are just not good enough. And I don't mean to talk about their talent at all. They're both talented. We've seen what they did at previous stops. We've seen what even on the floor they're doing here. They're not bad basketball players. They don't work together. Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee do not work as a duo in the backcourt. And they're taking away in a lot of ways from what Alex Condon can do at the center position. Thomas Houck has taken a big leap, but he doesn't always get the ball in the spot when he needs it. You've got two guards who are pressing, two guards who are struggling with inefficiency, struggling to score, struggling to make an impact. And that doesn't go well for the players around them, which are the anchors of this team. The front court is what we knew. That was a solid commodity, a championship winning group in the front court. And the guards can't figure things out. Well, they're the ones who have to get the ball to those players. So it has had ripple effects. Florida is not able to win these big games. Now, the reason that I don't have them in panic with Kentucky is because they've played close all the big teams. They just aren't good enough to win it all. They could still be a round of 32, even a Sweet 16 team. They're just not going to win it all unless something serious changes in that backcourt. Still a really good team, still a ton of talent on that roster. They're just not what they were last year, and so there is real concern there. Ole Miss. I think it's just a miss. I think Ole Miss missed. The roster does not look like it's going to compete for an NCAA tournament bid. Not going to compete in the SEC for sure. I just don't think that it's a good enough roster right now to make a whole lot of noise. And we'll see if they can find something special in conference play, but I just am not sure of the ceiling for this Ole Miss team. And Mississippi State, I really question what happened. This is a team that, almost regardless of personnel, has been just solid lock for NCAA tournament over the last several years under Chris Jans. And it just hasn't come together this year. Josh Hubbard is there. He is still an excellent basketball player, but under 500 in non-conference play is not going to get it done in the SEC. I think they're almost completely out of the picture for an NCAA tournament bid. When we come back on the other side, we're going to talk about some mailbag questions, walk through some of the things that I've been asked across the sport of college basketball right here on Three True Values to wrap up the show. Well, welcome back in here as we wrap up the show on Three True Values. We're taking your questions in a mailbag. Every other week, we kind of do this. We walk through some of the questions that I've gotten across college basketball in recent days. So I want to touch first on Nebraska ball. Yeah, that's right. Nebraska and Fred Hoiberg are 10-0, the best record in college basketball to this point. Really impressive stuff from the Cornhuskers. Longest winning streak in the country, of course, dating back to last season when they didn't make the NCAA tournament or the NIT, but went to the Fox event, which was put together and won it. So extended win streak for Nebraska. Man, they are really good. Rink Mast is the real deal. He is going to play basketball professionally for a long time. I don't know if it's going to be in the NBA. But over in Europe or wherever he wants to play, if he chooses to play professional basketball, he will be able to do it, and he will have a great career in the process. And you surround him with shooters. I mean, it's a formula that works. It's a proven formula. Surround a big who has some processing ability, who understands how to work on the block, the footwork, the hand-eye stuff. He's got it all. And really impressive to watch it all go down for Nebraska this season. And just great to see them, the only Power 4 team that has never won an NCAA tournament game. They're still looking for it this is, if you listen to their fans, they're getting real excited that this might be the year. And I'll tell you what, it might be their best opportunity because they're starting to creep up, making a leap in bracketology. They're going to keep seeing their number go higher and higher, which obviously gives them a better and better opponent with a good chance to pick up a first round win. Question number 2 here is my thoughts on the Memphis Louisville game and the rivalry as a whole. Great to see this rivalry renewed. I obviously grew up in Memphis a little bit after the Memphis Louisville rivalry. I know it kind of hit its stride. It was at its strongest through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I did not grow up in the Memphis Louisville rivalry. But what I did is I grew up around people who did, parents of friends, mentors that I've looked up to in this profession and just around the sport of basketball, whether it was my coaches, whether it was other people around the game that you meet, that you talk to. They have a real deep appreciation for this rivalry. There is serious, hate between the two sides. You talk about the history that goes into this matchup. And I think it's great to get it back because even though it's not a top 25 game this this year, I think that having it continue over time is going to be beneficial for both programs. We have lost some rivalry in the sport. Obviously, it's still there. We're going to talk about a couple rivalries that are coming up here later in this segment. But it's just good to have traditional rivalries with a big storyline where the fans come out that they are excited. I mean, I think fans are going to travel. I think that you're going to see a packed out house. I think it's going to be a great environment because you're going to get a lot of people in there with nostalgia. And nostalgia is a big part of what sports is all about. It's not just about watching your team on that night to see if they can win. It's about how tonight's game connects to all of your memories, everything that you think and feel about your team, the team that they're facing, the players on the court, the players on the sideline now as coaches. Penny Hardaway being the coach at Memphis, I think is big for this as it restarts. There's so many Louisville fans who have memories of Penny Hardaway being an opposing player, booing him out on the court. Now they get to boo him as the coach. That means something. It's another connection there to be made, and you then pass that down. You're going to have plenty of people bringing their kids, whether they're traveling to the game, whether they're in town, that are going to take their kids. Their kids are going to see their parents have a different feeling about this game than they've ever seen at a different game in a different time. Now, Louisville obviously has that Kentucky rivalry too. And so this isn't some unheard of thing for them. But it's the more that you have of that, the better. And I do think that there is some element of that Louisville-Kentucky rivalry. I mean, that's the big rivalry. That's the tickets you can't get your hands on. If you're a fan of Louisville and you remember the Louisville-Memphis days, you can probably go get a ticket for this game. I don't think it's going to be as hard as getting a Louisville-Kentucky ticket. So then you can take your kid and you can experience that. I think there's a lot that goes into it that makes it a really good series that I'm looking forward to seeing the people on both sides of this rivalry be engaged in what it means, the history behind it. And finally, our last question today, Mikel Brown or Kingston Flemings? Let me tell you, it's getting really close. Mikel Brown has struggled a little bit with efficiency so far against high major opponents. So I'm interested to see as the season goes on. I won't have a definitive answer for this until we see. Because I think Mikel Brown is still getting adjusted to the college game in a lot of ways. Kingston Flemings, though, he has come out red hot. If you told me that the season was ending today, I would slide Kingston ahead. I think that he's got the size, he's got the strength, he's got that quick twitch. He gets into the lane at a high level. Both of these guys do. And they both process so well, getting the ball out. The real swing here is Kingston Fleming's shooting numbers. I'm interested to see, do they can tail off in Big 12 play? Because he's never been this high level shooter before in his career. Did he put in that much work in the offseason? Did he become that much better of a shooter? Is he benefiting from spacing from his teammates at Houston that he's just never had before? What is it that is creating such an advantage for him right now? And then for Mikel Brown, can he get those numbers to come up a little bit? We'll see both of those over the course of the year. Like I said, if today I had to make a decision, the season's canceled, no more tape on these guys, pick one to go higher, I'd probably go Kingston Flemings. But Mikel Brown is extremely talented. We saw it in the offseason during international play. We've seen it in flashes here during this early season. I don't think you can go wrong with either of them right now. Let's get you out of here with the games of the week now as we wrap up today's episode of Three True Values. Here on Thursday night, we've got Iowa State. There's that rivalry I was talking about earlier, another big one that is scheduled in the non-conference slate. UConn and Texas is our game on Friday. You're not going to want to miss that one. Texas, we just talked about them earlier. Yeah, they're in a bad spot. This could get them back in the area they need to be in. If they can pull off this type of upset, it would be huge for the Longhorns. Arizona, Alabama, our game on Saturday. This is a big slate for college basketball. None bigger than this one. Arizona, we know how great their resume already looks. You look at an Alabama team that has trended the right direction. They've got some big wins. They've got a couple of losses to these top teams. We'll see how this one plays out. St. Mary's, Boise State is going to be our game on Sunday. Not a ton to choose from, but I do think St. Mary's has kind of gone under the radar. They're a really good team. The analytics really like them to this point. And Boise State, despite that bizarre non-D1 loss to start the season, has looked pretty good otherwise. So we'll see. Can they actually come back and overcome that type of loss on their resume? TCU and Incarnate Word on Monday. Now, this is a really light college basketball slate. TCU, one of the only teams even in the bubble conversation that's playing. So we'll give them a watch. We'll see what they can do. Louisville, Tennessee on Tuesday. Another big one. Louisville is playing some top level competition in the SEC this year. Already played Arkansas. They're looking to bounce back. Tennessee in need of some bounce back wins. They got to get things rolling the right way again after a string of losses that we spoke about in the last segment. And on Wednesday, we'll wrap things up with Vanderbilt and Memphis. Going to be in Memphis, so Vanderbilt getting a true road game against an in-state opponent. Let's see what they can do. They're undefeated to this point. They're leading the way in the SEC. Can they keep things rolling against a Memphis team that, yes, they've had ups and downs, but just beat a Baylor team recently? So maybe they've got things pointed at least in the right direction. We'll be back next week. On Tuesday, we will have NBA draft talk with Jamie Shaw. On Thursday, we will have all things college basketball for you. You're not going to want to miss it right here on Three True Values.